Start.
Good evening, teachers, parents, and students. Welcome to my 8th grade portfolio defense. Today, in my defense, we will be discussing many different topics and problems, all representing growth in my life. Table of contents. So, this is how my student-led defense will go. First, I will have my introduction, and then second, I'll talk about my 2 POLs. I'll read my personal narrative to you guys. I'll have my conclusion, and lastly, we will have time for questions. Let me start off with a few fun facts about myself. Number 1, I'm the youngest of 2 siblings in my family. Second, I love to play sports, especially basketball. And later when I read my narrative, you guys will see why basketball is a really big part of my life. Number 3, I have many different hobbies, including photography, art, and I like to snowboard, ski, and similar activities. Number 4, I love to listen to music. I love R&B and I love rap. Sometimes I like to listen to reggae and similar genres. Now let's talk less about me and more about my growth. Throughout the school year, I've developed multiple skills on presenting and learning. I've used multiple competencies throughout the years, including leadership, collectivism, and self-determination, in order to grow and prepare myself for the future. Now, starting off my presentation and defenses, my POL 1. For my first POL, I chose to do the Humanities exhibition. The exhibition was a project in humanities where we each chose a problem in our world we felt passionate about. We wrote and created a presentation about the problem, spreading awareness and calling out the government. We would present our exhibition in front of a large group of adults, growing our presentation skills. From each exhibition, we would see our world is not as pleasing as it seems. For the project, the competency I used was self-determination. With my competency, I found myself researching, improving, and always working hard on rehearsals, revisions, and refinements. I found this competency very useful because it allowed me to find and pick out areas that could use improvement. From this, I could revise and get back to rehearsing. While I was happy with my performance in my exhibition, I found that I could improve in my work quality. Some parts of my exhibition seemed rushed. For example, in my essay, I had some typos which caused me to stutter when presenting. But I did solve this using the self-determination competency, which is how it ties in. Because for me, self-determination means working hard and always working hard to be your best. So I really locked in and really tried to fix all my mistakes. Also, out of school, I always find myself striving and working hard to improve and achieve my goals in basketball, school, hobbies, and other activities. Secondly, for my POL 2, I chose to do the helmet project instead. For this project, the class split up into multiple different groups, all choosing a different sport. Each group using what they have learned about Newton's laws, energy, and concussions. We were all assigned to create a helmet for our chosen sport, trying to achieve a certain criteria. For example, in our criteria, we had to take into account affordability and safety. We would use multiple art materials in order to create our dream helmet to reduce injuries in our chosen sport. When finished with our design, we would then test the helmet on a foam head, trying to ensure full safety. We had put this head into multiple situations, realistic situations, such as a drop test to try and represent getting tackled by a football player. I found myself using the critical thinking competency so I could break down my task to produce the best helmet possible. By breaking down my task, I was able to focus on one improvement at a time. For example, when our helmet would fail to protect the head, I could break down what could have went wrong, and after finding the problem, I could come up with a solution. This happened in STEM when we were doing one of the examples with the head, and we were doing a drop test. But the head, it would keep breaking, and it really wasn't getting protected by the helmet. So I decided, let me break this down. And I added some padding to reduce impacts on the head, and it worked, and it really protected the head really well. I found my strengths using critical thinking in the assignment when thinking outside the box for clever and unique ideas. Unique ideas such as the design of the helmet or the methods we used to protect the helmet, they were really different and other than our other classmates, and it was really interesting. Now, I'm going to read to you guys my personal narrative, but before I read the personal narrative to you guys, I want you guys to think about these little bullet points as I go along. First of all, the competency in my personal narrative will be self-determination. And the topic of my narrative is how I took a step out of my shell using my first experience with basketball as a strong example. And lastly, think about how have I grown and what decision did I make that affected my life throughout the story. And without further ado, this might take a minute, but here's my personal narrative. Have you ever been so confident just to be destroyed, humbled, and sat down? Well, in the 3rd grade, there was this little boy, and every lunchtime, we would go play sports with his friends, whether it was football, kickball, or basketball. He would race all the other kids, and with his competitive self, of course, he would always win. He always loved the feeling of being the winner, the fastest runner, or the highest jumper. If you haven't caught on by now, what we're talking about is 3rd grade me. And of course, being me, when I heard there was a basketball team and all my friends were joining, how could I resist? On the day of tryouts, I did well. I made the A team with all my friends, and I was really proud of myself. And coming with an amazing tryout, my first game came along, and everything turned around. It was suddenly game day, and I had nothing else on my mind but basketball. As we warmed up, my heart pounded harder and harder with every step I took. But what made me so nervous? As we were preparing to start the game, I thought to myself, I'm good at basketball, right? My thoughts brought me back to school. In school, I'd always been the first or second pick when playing. I'd always played with confidence, knowing I was one of the best. But now, I'm in a real game. What was so different about this? Was it the big... I didn't exactly know what it was yet, but I knew this wasn't it. As the game went along, I was on the court, but at the same time, I was not in the game. Instead, I was stuck in my own head, thinking, this was nothing like school. This was no fun at all. I wasn't even near being the best. I went from first pick in school confident to the kid who was always left out of the game because the teams were full. My mind flashed back into the game as the whistle blew in my ear. My coach pulled me into the huddle and singled me out. He asked me, "Are you scared?" I didn't want to look bad in front of my friends, but I also had no answer. So I simply gave him a shrug. He asked me over and over and told me, "It's yes or no, don't shrug at me." And after the longest time out of my life, I said out of full honesty, trying to hold my tears, "Yes." This wasn't a loud yes, it was merely a whisper. I couldn't speak or breathe. It was like the feeling of being punched right in the stomach. I sat at the end of the bench, knowing all my friends were watching me. I wanted to fold into a little ball and just disappear. I didn't want to be there. Anywhere would be better than this. Every game after that, basketball didn't get any more fun or any easier. I would walk onto the court with my team up. We were winning, but I, as an individual player, have not felt even nearly close to the victory of winning. Every game, I would only run up and down the court, checking the time and wondering, when's this game going to end? It was like this game after game, my team would win weekend after weekend, but I alone lost as a player. Nearing the end of my season, my team was still undefeated, one of the best in the league. The next game I would play would be the semifinals. High stakes, big crowds, and of course, high expectations. As we warmed up, my heart pounded harder and harder with every step I took. But why was I so nervous? This time, I knew why. I looked at my family in the crowd, then at the other team, and then to the court. None of these things held me back. The only thing holding me back was me. This game, I told myself that I would show I do belong on the court. And as I sat on the bench, all I could think about was how I played throughout the season and how I was going to show that I belong. I subbed in late in the match. My team was taking the ball out, and I remember seeing this wide open spot right next to the basket. It looked almost as if it was glowing. I ran right past my defender, and everything was in slow motion. I knew this was my shot, literally. My teammate passed me the ball, and I shot it. And as the ball fell right through the rim, I felt it. My confidence. My team won that game, but I, as an individual, won the championship. I changed in many things, but most importantly, in my confidence. The rest of the finals, I played like I was part of the team and not a random person on the court. My team ended undefeated that season, winning the championship, and I as well ended on a championship ring. To this day, I think about these moments before every game I play. That one shot I took so long ago is the whole reason I am who I am today, on and off the court. Over these years, I've used self-determination and pushed myself. I changed through this one shot by knowing if I don't take risks, and step out of my comfort zone, I'm only limiting my own dreams and what can be of them. I'm now again playing with the same first pick in school confidence, no matter the stage, the big crowd, or the other team. And while you may be hearing this story thinking it's about my life and my confidence in basketball, you're not wrong. But reimagine this story like it's so much more, and you'll understand why basketball is way more than it gets to be. Change is something that people usually find inconvenient or uncomfortable, but the things I accomplished that season as a small kid made me realize that one small change can change your whole life. And that's the end of my narrative. And now I will move on to my conclusion slide. In all, I've used self-determination in order to examine and go over my decisions, and also in order to explain my evidence. I've used critical thinking to break down problems and overcome them. I also use critical thinking and thinking outside the box and generating claims using relevant evidence. For example, out of school, I use both of these when problem solving and I'm stuck in a situation. Leadership was another competency I used to share my knowledge and guide my peers. I was able to use leadership skills with my groups in order to lead my groups to success. For example, out of school, if I see one of use my leadership skills to turn them the right way. Conclusion. As seen throughout my presentation, I have grown using multiple competencies and indicators to my advantage. I've overcome challenges, helped out peers, and showed strength in many ways. I feel because of this, I should pass my portfolio defense in the 8th grade. Thank you for listening to my student-led conference, the student defense. Is there any questions?